Country, including right here in Pennsylvania.
One central Pennsylvania mother tells her own son's story to raise awareness of the disease. And there's a new resource being offered to some students in the East Pennsboro district. We'll introduce you to Murphy, a 5-month-old puppy who's now on the job helping students.
Thousands of migrants gather along the Mexico border as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo heads to Mexico City. I'm Lauren Blanchard in Washington with the latest coming up.
This is Fox 43 News at 5.
A polio-like illness affecting mostly children is popping up across the country, and it's starting to be seen right here in Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining us. I'm Allie Bradley.
And I'm Jackie DeTore. While the official case count remains low, health officials still warn to keep an eye out for this potentially life-threatening illness. Fox 43's Jack Ebel joins us now in West Manchester Township, Lancaster County, with more.
Jackie and Allie, it's called acute flaccid myelitis, or AFM. The Department of Health says that there are 3 confirmed cases in Pennsylvania as of this point, and there are 4 suspected cases. One mother here in West Manchester Township, York County, says a MRI revealed her son had it in September 2016. So now she's sharing with others to raise awareness of what she calls a dangerous and misunderstood disease. 7-year-old Sebastian practices some of his tricks in his wheelchair. It's been a long road for him to get to this point.
He's become a little warrior and a little fighter. My 7-year-old little boy is inspiring me at times with how tough he can be.
His mother, Krista, says when Bastian was 5 years old, the family was dealing with colds during a trip to Philadelphia in August 2016. Krista says when the kids had to go to the bathroom, something appeared wrong.
When I went to take Sebastian in the bathroom, he couldn't get his hand into the sink. He was trying, he just couldn't get it up into the sink. And as we were leaving the bathroom, I noticed that he was kind of tripping a little bit.
Within 48 hours, Sebastian was paralyzed from the neck down. He had problems breathing, speaking, and turning his head. At first, Krista says he was diagnosed with transverse myelitis. A month later, an MRI revealed acute flaccid myelitis, or AFM. Dr. Ina Saini with Geisinger Holy Spirit in Camp Hill says it's a disease that attacks muscles and nerves in the arms and legs, causing paralysis. However, she says very little is known about AFM at this point.
It's still a mystery disease till we know what causes it, what triggers it, what makes it better. We just have to take precautions.
Dr. Saini explains AFM can cause lifelong paralysis in some patients, and others can fully recover. Krista says Sebastian's journey started immediately, receiving a Plex treatment to help his breathing. IVIG treatment also helped, and about 2,000 hours of intensive physical therapy. Now Sebastian is able to walk with a walker and transfer himself to and from his wheelchair.
Those things would not have been possible if he didn't have immediate intensive physical therapy.
For parents, Krista says if their child isn't feeling good, even if it appears to be a cold, take it seriously. She says if any weakness or paralysis is spotted in the child, they should be taken to the emergency room immediately.
And they need to insist on an MRI and a spinal tap if necessary. It is their job to help their child get better. It's a lot of work, but it's ultimately their job.
The Pennsylvania Department of Health says over the previous 4 years, there have been 15 confirmed cases of AFM in the state. Now, as far as preventative measures, health experts say do not underestimate the power of using and teaching your children effective and appropriate hand washing methods. Reporting live in West Manchester Township, York County, Jack Ebel, Fox 43 News.
Today, Governor Tom Wolf signed an anti-hazing legislation into law, creating stricter criminal penalties for hazing. The law will be named after Timothy Piazza, a Penn State University student who died after a night of drinking and hazing at a fraternity in 2017. The governor was joined by the Piazza family and Senator Jake Corman, a co-sponsor of the bill. The legislation requires colleges to maintain policies to stop hazing. It would also make universities terminate fraternities or sororities where hazing occurs.
We are proud today that the Timothy J. Piazza anti-hazing law has been enacted. We have sadness in our hearts every day without Tim in our lives, but are encouraged that this law will serve to hold accountable those who commit the crime of hazing, which cost Tim his life, and by its deterrent effect, will save the lives of young men and women like Tim.
Governor Wolf, Senator Corman, and the Piazza family hope this law will now encourage other states to draft anti-hazing legislation.
The State Department of Corrections announcing an update on the new prison protocols in the Commonwealth. The new policies follow a series of incidents over the summer where multiple prison staff and corrections officers were sickened by coming into contact with synthetic drugs that came through the mail system. DOC Secretary John Wetzel says during the first month of the new protocols, the number of visits by staff who were sent to the emergency room dropped from 48 to just 8 between August and September. And the number of drug fines dropped by 46%. That's the lowest level in more than a year. Police in Lebanon are investigating the deadly shooting of a local pastor. It happened shortly after 11:30 last night along North 11th Street. Police say that's where officers found the victim, 36-year-old Roberto Sotolongo, in a backyard. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Sotolongo was reportedly a pastor at the Parantha House of Prayer on North 11th Street.
Unfortunately, for whatever reason, that we have yet to discover that Mr. Sotolongo was the intended victim in this shooting incident. So we don't believe that the public should be concerned for their safety.
Police say they are working around the clock to solve this case. This is the second homicide in Lebanon County since the start of 2018. A Montgomery County man is charged with murder for a deadly shooting in Lebanon County earlier this year. Cornwall police say 37-year-old Gilberto Torres Reyes murdered Jelson Ortiz and Alexis Garcia on April 9th. The two victims were found with gunshot wounds next to a car that had crashed off an exit ramp on Route 322. You can expect more on this story next week as police are planning to hold a press conference on Tuesday. Police in York County have charged a man with sexually assaulting a 10-year-old girl. According to investigators, 34-year-old Kevin Fountain was supposed to be watching that child when the incident happened. Police say the child's father reported the alleged assault over the summer. The victim told investigators that Fountain had touched her inappropriately while she slept. Fountain is currently in York County Prison on unrelated charges. He's facing several charges, including attempted child rape and aggravated indecent assault.
Police are asking for help identifying the person who robbed a bank in Dauphin County. Here are surveillance photos taken from the First National Bank along Lingelstown Road in Lower Paxton Township. According to investigators, the suspect walked into the bank yesterday, shortly after 3 in the afternoon, and then demanded money. Police say that crook ran away. The York County coroner says one woman was killed after a two-vehicle crash last night. It happened around 9:30 at the intersection of Mount Pisgah and Yorkana Roads in Lower Windsor Township. According to the coroner, a car failed to stop at a stop sign and ended up hitting a truck. The driver of the car, whose identity has not been released, was pronounced dead at the scene. That crash is still under investigation.
In Lancaster County, a fire breaking out at a grain roasting facility in Raffo Township. It happened this morning in the 1100 block of Newcomer Road just before 8. The cause of that fire is under investigation. That building was destroyed. The estimated cost of damage is totaling around $500,000.
Mary Ellen here now with a look at the forecast. So this morning at the bus stop, real cold.
Oh, yes.
Later today, beautiful.
Yeah, I slept right through the cold, so I have no idea.
There you go.
You just saw the temperatures.
Yeah, that's right. I'm like, I'm not getting out of bed.
Good idea.
A nice afternoon, though, I have to say. You can see temperatures in the low 60s. York, 62. Harrisburg at 61, along with Marietta and Mechanicsburg at 60. And you see the clouds there. We had a lot of sunshine for much of the day, but the clouds are drifting in, and they will continue to thicken up as we go through the evening hours. We also had a nice breeze out of the south-southwest. That also helped to bring in some milder air. Still a little bit of a breeze at this hour that will continue really for much of the evening and into the overnight period. Clouds will continue to increase and thicken up heading into the evening hours, but I do expect it to stay on the dry side. Here's a look hour by hour. Look at these temperatures. They stay in the 50s all the way through that 10 o'clock hour. In fact, it won't be near as cold overnight tonight as it was this morning. In fact, we start off the weekend mild, but big changes by the second half. I'll have more in the Weather Smart forecast coming up shortly.
There's a new member of the East Pennsboro School District, and she may look a little different. She has 4 legs, she's pretty furry and also cuddly, and she's providing a valuable service to people in the district. Fox 43's Chelsea Kerbler joining us live in East Pennsboro Township, Cumberland County with this story. Chelsea?
Well, that new member is now a dog, and she just completed her second week here at East Pennsboro Middle School. She's the district's therapy dog, and school officials say they didn't realize how much they needed her until she got here.
Oh my gosh, she's so Murphy, a 5-month-old Labradoodle, is the talk of the school at East Pennsboro Middle School.
She just makes people happy.
Training since she was just 3 days old, she's now on the job as the district's new therapy dog.
When students are in a situation in which they're emotionally escalated, we need to de-escalate them or work with them to help them. Murphy comes in, she's just an added resource to help us get past that initial barrier of calming the kids down.
Students say not only does Murphy provide emotional support when they're stressed or overwhelmed with things in their lives, but she also gives them a pick-me-up when the school day seems to be dragging.
It makes them happier about being at school and makes them more excited to be there.
Justin Newcam, assistant principal at the middle school, is one of the 5 certified handlers in the district for Murphy. He says he knew the benefits adding a therapy dog would have, but did not realize just how much Murphy was needed until she got there.
Without her, she's an invaluable resource to us now that we see her in action and the power that she has working with kids and adults. Okay, sit.
Murphy and her 5 months of training did not come cheap. With a price tag of $13,000, the district would not have been able to afford her if it weren't for the local organization, Kickin' for Kids, who paid for all of Murphy's expenses.
For them to see the importance of a therapy dog in the classroom and in the school building, and to be able to, to willingness to finance that is, just an awesome opportunity, and we are forever grateful for that.
In the future, the district hopes to add a therapy dog to each of their schools. In East Pennsboro Township, Cumberland County, Chelsea Kerbler, Fox 43 News.
Police and supporters of Big Brothers Big Sisters came out to the capital city today to rappel down a building. It was the organization's 2nd annual Over the Edge fundraiser. Participants rappelled down the 18-story Market Square Plaza building in Harrisburg. Police officers in the nonprofit's Bigs in Blue program also shimmied down the building.
Afraid of heights, so this is a way to overcome my fear, and again for a good cause and for the kids, and I think it's a great idea, and it's just a real thrill and a good experience.
Big Brothers Big Sisters set a high fundraising goal of $100,000.
A sentencing date has been set for former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. Today, he appeared in federal court in Virginia in a wheelchair due to significant health issues tied to his detention center confinement. Manafort learned he will be sentenced on February 8th for 8 counts of tax evasion and bank fraud and dismissed the remaining charges against him. Manafort's attorney requesting he be sentenced soon so he can be moved. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo traveling to Mexico as a large migrant caravan makes its way to the U.S. The trip across the southern border comes as Republicans and Democrats remain divided over the issue of immigration. Fox's Lauren Blanchard has more.
President Trump's 2016 presidential campaign was largely based on his hardline stance on border security and immigration. And with less than 3 weeks until the midterm elections, the issue is again front and center. Thousands of migrants arrive at Mexico's doorstep, fleeing poverty and violence in Central America. The caravan of Honduran migrants heading for the U.S. in spite of President Trump's threats to detain and deport. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo holding urgent meetings in Mexico, urging authorities to stop the migrants before reaching the United States border.
The challenge related to securing our southern border is also a challenge for American sovereignty. We've got to fix U.S. laws in order to handle this properly as well. That is an American burden.
Mexican leaders announcing they will return migrants coming through Mexico to their home countries and are seeking assistance from the United Nations Refugee Agency.
People without documents will not be allowed into Mexico. They will be returned. People that claim asylum will be processed, but they'll be detained while they're being processed.
The decision from Mexican officials coming after President Trump has, for days, railed against Democrats in Congress while threatening to cut off U.S. aid and close the southern border.
He was very tough on Mexico. He was very critical of Mexico, but that put them in a position where I think they were more receptive to negotiate with him.
Tonight, the president will be near the southern border himself, where he's holding a rally in Arizona in support of Congresswoman Martha McSally. In Washington, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
Coming up, the search continues for the Washington Post journalist who vanished after going inside of the Saudi consulate, the Turkish consulate rather, in Istanbul.
We'll have the latest in the investigation.
Early voting is underway, and across the country, folks are hitting the polls in what could be record numbers. I'm Doug McKelway in Washington. I've got the details coming up.
You're watching Fox 43 News at 5. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is Fox 43 News at 5.
Survivors of childhood sexual assault filled the Senate Hall of the state capitol today. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Allie Bradley. Now, they're urging Senate leaders to come to an agreement to pass statute of limitations reform before this legislative session ends later this week. Fox 43's Chelsea Kerbler is live in Harrisburg with what these survivors did to get the attention here of Senate leaders. Chelsea.
Survivors stood in the hallway outside of Senate offices and meeting rooms. Not only were they holding signs and shouting chants about childhood sexual abuse, but they also each took time to read parts of the grand jury report into sexual abuse in Pennsylvania diocese.
And that sex with a child was not violating them, it was doing something to them externally.
Page by page, the Pennsylvania Catholic Diocese grand jury report into childhood sexual abuse is read in the halls of the Senate wing at the state capitol.
Children were raped in places of worship, in schools, and in diocesan-owned vehicles, and were groomed through diocesan programs and retreats.
Fighting through tears and a wave of emotion, it was tough for many people to be there, hear the report, and remember their own abuse.
You know, I've been living with this for over 35 years, carrying it around with me as a survivor for over 35 years.
Alongside the survivors of childhood sexual abuse were people giving a voice to those who no longer have one.
He didn't want to let anybody see how much he was hurting.
Corey Leach lost his life at 31 years old after turning to drugs to deal with the pain of being abused by a priest as a child. His parents, Cindy and Bernie, are now doing what they believe Corey would want them to do, helping survivors of childhood sexual assault hold their abusers accountable. Current law allows a child sex abuse victim until they are 30 years old to file a civil lawsuit. The Leaches believe in adding a 2-year retroactive window as recommended by the grand jury report, allowing now adult victims of childhood sexual abuse the opportunity to file civil claims.
Every child should have that right, because when they're young, you can't process it. I don't think you need to be older to be able to do that. So they need the opportunity to grow and become an adult and mature and then face their accuser.
The demonstration held Monday was organized by State Rep Mark Rossi, a victim of childhood sexual abuse himself. As the clock winds down on this legislative session, Rossi is still hopeful he and Senate leaders can come to an agreement on an amendment that would add a retroactive window to Senate Bill 261.
When I take back whatever bill they send us from the Senate, I want to make sure it's just the best product for victims out there. And that's my main concern is, you know, whatever we do, it's got to be the best for them first.
We reached out to Senators Scarnati and Corman's offices for comment on adding a retroactive window, but have not heard back. In Harrisburg, Chelsea Kerbler, Fox 43 News.
All right, taking a first look at that evening weather forecast, and it's a really, really nice fall day out there. It's not too bad.
It doesn't feel too bad. It feels
Yes.
mild, but you'll notice Chelsea had her rain jacket on, and you might want to have one this evening, even though it wasn't raining where she is. There are some light showers out there, and we are tracking some more activity just to the north and west. You could see around the State College radar there a line of showers and storms. Those are actually out ahead of a cold front. There may be a little rumble of thunder. I shouldn't say storms, but there may be an embedded thunderstorm in that line. But you can see we're just getting some light sprinkles, very light shower activity here in southwestern New York. Most everybody just enjoying a mild day. And temperatures in the 60s, so it feels pretty good. But there you can see where the front is by this little ribbon of moisture, and this is going to move through in the evening hours. So you want to keep that raincoat or that umbrella handy if you have plans to head out this evening. Temperatures in the 60s, pretty close to where we should be for this time of the year. York 65, Harrisburg 64, low 60s in Mechanicsburg and Marietta, and you can see plenty of cloud cover. Winds, a little bit of a breeze starting to pick up out of the south-southwest, and they're going to strengthen. They're going to get quite gusty as we go through the evening hours, and I'll let you know just how strong coming up. In the meantime, though, a few more showers will be possible up until about that 8-9 o'clock hour, and then we are drying out. I'll have more in the Weather Smart forecast and the chilly air that is headed our way.
President Donald Trump visiting hard-hit areas of Florida and Georgia, promising a quick federal response to Hurricane Michael. Fox's Mike Tobin has more from Mexico Beach, Florida.
It was one of the most powerful storms on record, Hurricane Michael, causing more than a dozen deaths as it churned its way through the Florida Panhandle and Georgia. Now President Trump and the First Lady are visiting the area, touring the damage and meeting with first responders and survivors.
The one problem is some homes don't exist anymore. I mean, they're literally wiped out. They have electric going to empty sites, but the electric companies have been really incredible in response.
The president is promising a big federal response that will ramp up soon, but the destruction here is widespread, with thousands of homes and businesses destroyed or damaged. Some people who decided to ignore evacuation orders and stay with their homes say they're grateful to be alive.
I was more scared there than any time I've ever been scared in my life. I could cry to think about it, because I didn't know it was going to stop.
Now, local and state officials are looking to the White House to help coordinate the recovery effort. President Trump has signed several disaster declarations for Florida and Georgia, freeing up federal funds and resources to help those states. And folks throughout the region say they're ready to get to work and start rebuilding.
We're going to help each other out, and we're going to get through this. This is just a temporary thing. We're going to get through this.
We're starting to get early estimates of just how much damage Hurricane Michael caused, with one insurance group estimating between $6 and $10 billion. In Mexico Beach, Florida, Mike Tobin, Fox 43 News.
Emergency crews responding to a chlorine gas leak in Ephrata, Lancaster County this morning. At 7:30, nearly 50 pounds of chlorine gas were released inside the water treatment plant at the Ephrata Borough Public Works Complex. One worker was taken to a hospital due to chlorine gas exposure. Police, though, say that all the others are doing okay. The State Department of Environmental Protection was notified, and authorities say there are currently no problems with the water.
Due to weather conditions, we had prevailing winds and a favoring such as that. We did not have to cause any evacuation. What we did allow is people to shelter in place. This was advantageous to us.
Investigators say the leak was caused by a mechanical malfunction, and it does remain under investigation tonight. Police in Lancaster County are asking for the public's help to identify two men who robbed a convenience store. Surveillance images show the suspects inside the Turkey Hill along Chestnut Street in Columbia. Take a look here. This happened Sunday morning, shortly after 1:30. Police say one of the suspects pulled out a handgun before the pair took off with a small amount of cash and cigarettes. Police believe both suspects are possibly in their late teens. In York County, Hanover police are investigating a deadly accident that happened early this morning, which involved a pedestrian. Police say just after 6, an 80-year-old man was crossing the road at Carlisle Street and Park Avenue when a Ford Escape hit him. He later died at York Hospital. Police say the man was wearing dark clothing when this happened. State police charging a tractor-trailer driver with a DUI over the weekend after 3 people were killed in an accident on I-83. This included a toddler. They say Jack Satterfield didn't stop for traffic when he hit multiple vehicles that slowed down on I-83 in Lower Paxton Township, Dauphin County, Friday night. 11 vehicles in all were involved in that crash. Court documents say Satterfield told police he drank 5 double-shot margaritas and at least 2 beers before leaving a restaurant in New Jersey earlier in the day. And the topic of DUI penalties in Pennsylvania is expected to be addressed at the Capitol this week. Legislation seeks to increase the penalties for repeat offenders of DUI, particularly if they hurt or kill another person. Fox 43's Jack Ebel joining us live in Lancaster with more on this story. Jack.
Allie, that legislation, Senate Bill 961, is expected to move through the House in the next day or so, that according to the bill's primary sponsor. Now, if the bill passes and is signed by Governor Tom Wolf, it would create the first ever scenario for a felony DUI in the Commonwealth, and it would also increase the mandatory sentence for repeat DUI offenders. According to the Pennsylvania DUI Association, more than 10,000 crashes, nearly 300 people died in alcohol-related incidents last year. Legislation aims to lower some of those numbers. One of the primary focuses of Senate Bill 961 is repeat DUI offenders.
We're sending a message loud and clear. We're not going to put up with this anymore in Pennsylvania.
Currently in PA, if someone driving impaired injures or kills someone in a crash, it's a minimum of 3 years in prison, no matter how many prior DUI convictions that person has. If Senate Bill 961 passes, that number increases to 5 years if the person has a prior DUI, and increases again to 7 years if a person has 2 or more DUI convictions.
Number one, they are deterrent. Number two, if you are stupid enough and reckless enough to do this, you're going to pay for the consequences. And it will also help the families of the victims. knowing that that person is going to spend a longer period of time in jail.
Missy Schweitzer's 20-year-old son Zachary was killed in November 2008 after getting into a crash with an impaired driver. She supports the legislation, saying it holds impaired drivers more accountable for their actions.
For first-time offenders, if you want to chalk that up as your mistake, go ahead. I'll give that to you. But there's a saying that you can never make the same mistake twice, because the second time it's a decision. And for those that drive repeatedly, again and again and again, while under the influence, there needs to be some consequences.
Chris Farrow, a criminal defense attorney, says while he generally agrees with enhancing penalties for repeat offenders, he doesn't think mandatory sentences will solve the DUI problem.
Addiction is a powerful force, and it doesn't necessarily get canceled out by legislation.
He believes additional and mandatory treatment, ankle monitors, or probation supervision will help those he calls good people struggling with addiction.
What we as a community have to look at is how do we treat DUI offenders, how do we treat alcoholism, how do we treat dependency, as opposed to just continuously ramping up and enhancing criminal penalties.
And Senator John Rafferty Jr. expects the bill to clear all the hurdles and make it onto Governor Tom Wolf's desk by the Wednesday voting session deadline. Reporting live in Lancaster, Jack Ebel, Fox 43 News.
Election Day is only a few weeks away, and state officials met today to make sure voting systems are secure. They met in Harrisburg this morning to discuss election integrity in the Keystone State. State officials and public foundations addressed possible threats to voting security, including cybersecurity issues. While some state and federal officials are worried about potential meddling from foreign actors like Russia and China, the Dauphin County Bureau of Voter Registration Elections says he isn't worried.
The Wolf administration is trying to get all 67 counties to go to a voter verifiable paper trail, but there's only one system that's been certified for use. There's no funding that's been provided. So there's a lot of questions, a lot of issues. There's a whole bunch of reforms that really need to be brought into the election code, which was written in 1937 with some minor modifications throughout. You know, if we're going to take elections into the 21st century, then we really need to take a look at the entire code as it stands right now.
And also a reminder tonight, voters in Dauphin County need to know that 5 polling places are being relocated ahead of the midterm elections next month. A new terminal takes off at Williamsport Regional Airport just north of Harrisburg. Coming up, why the new terminal is set apart from the old one and how passengers are reacting tonight. And ahead at 5:30, opening statements underway in the lawsuit leveled against an Ivy League school. Why a group of students is accusing Harvard University of discriminating against Asian Americans. You're watching Fox 43 News at 5. Stay with us. We'll be right back.